During Donald Trump's campaign for president, we saw the consistent Sunday tradition of his Republican stooges appearing on the Sunday shows to defend his words. But now that has become the tradition of them defending his actions, specifically the indefensible choices he has made of RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Matt Gaetz for high-level positions in his cabinet, which have not only gotten pushback from Democrats and independents, but Republicans as well. But of course, there are those spineless cowards in Donald Trump's orbit who are happy to go on and defend his decisions, and that is exactly what Senator Markwayne Mullin did today. But he got some serious pushback from Kristen Welker that kind of led him to throw a tantrum live on air, and we are going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really means the world to me. Now let's get into this interview.
Well, thank you for being here. I want to start with former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who, of course, President-elect Trump, as we just said, announced this week was his pick for Attorney General. You have said you trust Mr. Trump's decision-making in naming Gaetz, but you have been critical of Gaetz as well. Here's a little bit of what you've had to say.
We had all seen the videos he was showing on the House floor that all of us had walked away of the girls that he had slept with. And he walked up to me as Chris, now Governor Chris, and he said, man, she's a fine... And you can put the B word in place there. This is the type of individual Matt Gaetz is.
So, Senator, you clearly have questions about Matt Gaetz's character, but do you believe that Matt Gaetz is qualified to serve as Attorney General?
There's no question that Matt Gaetz and I have had our differences, and that's no secret. Moving forward, I do respect President Trump's the right to appoint these individuals, but underneath Article 2, Section 2, Congress has to advise and consent. And Matt Gaetz is going to go through the same scrutiny as every other individual, and I'm going to give him a fair shot just like every individual. And at the end of the day, the Senate has to confirm him. I do think it's a very, very tough role. I've got a tough situation that I've got to set my personal opinions, and they're really not opinions. I got to set my personal situation with Matt to the side and look at the facts. If he's qualified, he's qualified. Be quite frank, I didn't even know he was an attorney until after he was appointed Attorney General, and I had to do my research on him. And I know that's crazy because I served with him, but I just never did the dig to find out actually his actual degree, what it was in.
Well, and speaking of digging into his background, the House Ethics Committee was about to release the findings of its investigation into allegations of misconduct by former Congressman Gaetz. Of course, he abruptly resigned before that could happen. A number of your colleagues, including members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, have said they would like to see that report. Should the House Ethics Committee release that report, Senator?
Absolutely, and I believe the Senate should have access to that. Now, should it be released to the public or not? That's I guess that will be part of the negotiations, but that should be definitely part of our decision making. Once again, I go back to it in Article 2, Section 2 in the Constitution. The Senate has to advise and consent these individuals, and in that process, we're going to give Matt Gaetz the same chances we'll give all President Trump's nominees. And by the way, I do believe that President Trump has the ability to pick some really, really good people. You can see why he's been successful in business, why he was successful in running his campaign, because he surrounds himself with the right people. So I have no doubt that President Trump believes that Matt Gaetz is the right person to do the right job. But at the same time, the background of Matt Gaetz does matter, and what the decisions that the Senate makes has to be within our boundaries of the constitutional authority that we have, and we will do our due diligence there. And I'll say this: Matt will be treated the same as every nominee out there, from myself and every other senator out there.
And you say background matters. I want to ask you about his views. Here's a little bit of what Matt Gaetz had to say last year about the very law enforcement agencies that he is poised to be tapped to oversee. Take a look.
We either get this government back on our side, or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them, if they do not come to heel.
Senator, do you support getting rid of the FBI, the DOJ under any circumstances?
No, I actually agree with what Matt was saying there. As hard as that is for me to say that, I actually agree with him, because what he's saying is he's got to come to the side of the American people and quit playing politics. The DOJ and the FBI has been politicized. There's no question about it. We've seen what they've done to President Trump. We've seen the attacks that they continue to go after him with. The DOJ is 100% weaponized. You saw the FBI and the fake Russia hoax. You saw the FBI shielding the Biden family and shielding the laptop from the American people during the election. If they don't want to come back and do their job, and their job is to keep America safe, to watch over the America's freedom through DOJ, making sure the American justice system is running smoothly and leaving politics out of it. But they haven't lately. And if they don't want to come back and get focused on what the American people's mandate was for them, then we do need to revamp the system and say, hey, maybe we've got it wrong. So I don't disagree with what Matt was saying there.
Well, and worth noting, of course, Hunter Biden has now been convicted on federal charges. The charges that were brought against President-elect Trump were brought by individual grand juries.
We had to go through a process to get there.
Let me ask you broadly, though, do you support the president-elect telling his attorney general to prosecute, to go after people he considers to be his political enemies?
The president didn't say that. That's being taken completely out of context. And President Trump hasn't been the one that weaponized the DOJ to go after his political enemies. President Trump did not do that when he was in office the first 4 years. He could have clearly done that against the Clintons if he wanted to. He didn't. Who did weaponize the DOJ was the Biden administration. We saw them continuously going after President Trump, treating him completely different. Let's go think about the classified records that was kept at Mar-a-Lago versus the classified documents that was kept in the garage of Biden, and how the different reports read. It is no question they were treated different. Now, who has weaponized the politicals or the DOJ is the Democrats, and no one can deny what they did to President Trump with the 4 years underneath Biden.
Senator, it's worth noting there's absolutely no evidence that President Biden had anything to do with the federal charges brought against President-elect Trump. But are you...
So quite a bit to unpack there. But first, it was pretty funny that Kristen was prepared to just use his own words against him, which got Senator Mullin a little triggered already. But the pushback that he really couldn't handle came with respect to the DOJ. It is just not true that President Biden weaponized the Justice Department. But the fact that Republicans made that complaint and that are now really encouraging Donald Trump to actually do that with Matt Gaetz, one, shows how spineless they are. No shock there. But also just shows that they don't actually care about these institutions, and they're always happy to use them for their own political gain. And these arguments that they're trying to make on behalf of Donald Trump's cabinet keep getting weaker and weaker. Like, listen to the comparison that Markwayne Mullin got with President Biden's cabinet right here.
I do got a question for you. The Democrats are spending so much time talking about the scrutiny of President Trump's picks, and yet did we spend this amount of time scrutinizing Biden's pick? I mean, we can talk about Rachel, the Assistant Secretary of HHS. I think that's a pretty controversial pick from whatever pronoun he or she decides to use. We talk about Sam, the Assistant Secretary or Executive underneath Secretary of Energy. And the individual was arrested multiple times for stealing luggage off of conveyor belts inside airports. And I didn't see the same type of scrutiny that the Democrats used on these individuals' picks. There's been a lot of picks. I mean, we can talk about Pete Buttigieg. Is he really qualified to be Department of Transportation?
So very clearly just targeting the LGBTQ members of President Biden's cabinet and saying that's the reason that they're not qualified. I don't understand what he's saying there. Maybe trying to make the DEI hire argument, but I can't think of who's more of a DEI hire than a Fox Sunday host. Yeah, I don't know what qualifications Pete Hegseth has. So maybe you want to look in the mirror a little bit. But again, clearly just making bigoted attacks on President Biden's cabinet. And I think those are going to be a larger topic of conversation as Democrats figure out our electoral strategy. I've seen a lot of people say that we need to abandon LGBTQIA protections and talking about those important issues. And that's just not true. I know some people want to say that that shouldn't be the focus of our campaigns, and there's certainly merit to that argument. But I think someone who gave a great response to this idea that Democrats have become too woke with our policies and that's hurting us, is Governor Andy Beshear right here.
Do you think Democrats have been out of touch on some of these things that obviously resonate in states like yours?
Well, I think that all candidates should stand up for their beliefs, and that we don't have to abandon those beliefs. You know, I vetoed one of the nastiest anti-LGBTQ bills that my state had ever seen in my election year. But I did two things. Number one, I talked about my why. For me, that's my faith, where I'm taught that all children are children of God, and I wanted to stick up for some children that were being picked on in a pretty rough bill. But the second thing is the voters in my state knew the very next day I was going to be working on jobs. I was going to be opening a new health clinic, first hospital in our largest African-American neighborhood in 150 years. We just cut the ribbon on. We've created 2 pediatric autism centers in Appalachia so that people don't have to drive 2 hours. So it's both sharing your why and your authentic why for your views, but the other piece is about that focus. Because remember, if we're talking about this issue of the day, and then we're talking about what Donald Trump said last night, and then we're talking about jobs, we're only spending a third of the time talking about what people are worried about and what impacts their life the most.
I completely agree that the Democratic brand has maybe fallen short, has certainly fallen short of what our policy goals and outcomes are. If we are losing working class voters, we're doing something wrong. Not with our policies that take on big corporations, fight greed, and make sure that labor laws are strong, but with our brand and how we speak to folks about how we're fighting for them. Those are real issues that we have to address, but it doesn't mean we need to abandon the most vulnerable Americans. And that's what Andy Beshear put so perfectly, and that's what we need to continue to talk about and are going to on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.